People like Travolta and these celebrities, or I guess even regular people who are Scientologists, say they must feel they're getting something out of this. What do you think it is they're getting?
Um, well, I think Scientology is a form of psychotherapy, just as any other psychotherapy has followers. There are people who swear by Freudian analysis. There are people who swear by transactional analysis. There are Jungians. There are lots and lots of different schools of therapy. There are a lot of New Age therapies. You know, people go channeling. People, you know, meditate. People do all kinds of things to try and I don't know what, get their head on straight or whatever. I think Scientology is another form of psychotherapy.
Although it's one that was started by a second-rate science fiction writer. I mean, it's just sort of odd.
But there are a lot of kooky things that people are doing these days, and they're perfectly within their rights to do them. But I think it would be wise for Scientology to be recognized as a form of therapy such that it would be brought under the same rules and regulations as any other therapists are. But I think people get things out of Scientology the same way as they get things out of any situation where somebody is listening to you talk about yourself for hours and hours and hours at a time. You know, something has to happen. I think that's about as innocuous as I can tell you. The other side of it is that because it has no oversight and because Scientology frowns on medical intervention, and because Scientology considers psychiatry to be the source of all evil on the planet, Scientologists tend to be denied access to a lot of medical help that most people have access to. And I think that that can lead to some pretty dangerous situations, and I think it has. And I also think that a lot of people are Scientology practitioners with very, very little training. They get their own ideas about how it should be done. There's nobody in the government, there's nobody in any kind of regulatory situation to oversee what they're doing. And you know, I think people can get themselves into a lot of trouble because of that. But on the other hand, I think there are also people that feel that they've gotten a lot out of it, and they will defend it to the death. I know even people who are in Scientology who hear me say some things that I talk about sometimes don't believe what I'm saying. They've never had that experience. They can't imagine that such things would go on in Scientology. Their image of Scientology is the image that is presented publicly. That it is a self-help philosophy, and that it's as good as you make it. And they feel that anybody who criticizes it the way I do has done something so terrible that I'm so afraid that people might find out about it, that I'm trying to destroy Scientology because Scientology has the means to find out what I've done. That may sound a little convoluted, but it's true.
There's also the fact that it hoovers money out of people's wallets, obviously. I mean, at an impressive rate.
It's an enormous amount of money that people spend for this thing.
Do you think this is a cult? Would you look at it as a cult?
Well, I would call it a cult, and when I say that, what I mean is that it fits the criteria of a thought control or mind control group that Robert J. Lifton has talked about in his books. Margaret Singer, I don't know if you've heard of her, but she's...
Cult Awareness Network.
Yeah, she's a professor at UC Berkeley, and she's just written a book that's just been published about this whole question of what is a cult, what do cults do, what do you do about cults, you know, and it's a pretty definitive work. I think any group that takes over the boundaries of your own life, that takes over your thoughts, that causes you to think in a very restricted, very authoritarian way, that does not allow you to think about things outside of the boundaries of its rules, that requires that you act in a certain way, think in a certain way, and metes out serious punishment if you don't, whether it be psychological or physical. I think you could safely call that kind of a group a cult.
How do you look back on your own? I mean, it's more than a decade with it.
Well, I was in it for 15 years, and I'm beginning to understand what motivated me, how I ended up getting myself into that kind of a situation. I'm beginning to feel that I can take that experience and make it something valuable for myself by educating other people, and by really the education that it gave me about how susceptible people really are. I mean, if anybody would have ever told me that I was susceptible to that kind of mind control, to getting myself involved in such a totalitarian, really kind of fascist political situation, I would have been appalled. I would have thought that they were completely out of their minds. And I think it's given me a level of humility, you know, about people and what they really are capable of. And you know, there are a lot of abusive situations that people keep themselves in for various reasons. It's not, you know, people say, well, how could you have stayed in such a crazy situation? Well, you know, how does an abused wife stay in a marriage where she's being beaten? How does someone stay in a job where they're miserable? I mean, there are a lot of abusive situations that people feel trapped in, that they feel they can't get out of. And I think the important thing is for people to know that they really do have their own free will, and they really can survive without that person or that group or whatever it is that's got them entrapped.
Yeah.